it's nice to see you all here. And we'll go to the next slide to go over our agenda items. So for this monthly meeting, we'll be going over some just updates and reminders, the Hancock Mint migration, spending production updates, IJA updates, some next meetings that have been set that you would have received earlier last week, and then the WDR program updates. So first, we'll start off with the weatherization portion. And I'm sorry, I'm just trying to admit some people to the meeting. So first, we'll go over some of the updates and reminders. For LIHEAP 25, we have recently been notified that we are unable to receive the advance funds or reimbursements from DSS until after the federal shutdown ends. This does impact reimbursements and makes them delayed. We will be reimbursing them and processing them as quickly as possible, but our payments cannot be made until the advance funds are received or reimbursements from DSS are received. Then for the IJA update, payments are still being processed. The DOE approval process has recently been taking a little bit longer than in the past, but those payments are going through. For DOE 25, we do anticipate the grant agreements to go out by the end of this week. There was a delay on getting those out, but I do anticipate that they'll be going forward at the end of this week out to you all. And then starting in one part, I don't know if we needed. Yeah, starting in PY 25, any of the WRF funds that have been unspent will be reallocated. This will be a result in DOE admin being calculated with WRF funds. This is not an approach that we took with the first grant cycle that we received readiness funds, but it is something we will be doing going forward if the readiness funds are not being spent by your organization. So I think we've talked with some of the subgrantees about this, but just making you all aware when you start spending these funds, if you do not spend them, you will need to give some of your DOE admin back. And then for our Hancock Cloud Mint migration, if you have not provided your updated measures list to DHCD, please do so now. As a reminder, for November, we have 3 user trainings: our intake, audit, and closeout. Each training is being recorded. The closeout training is being held today, and that will be from 11:30 to 1:30. And we did have the intake training that took place last week. When this PowerPoint sent out, you can have a direct link to that recording, but it also has been emailed out. If you did not receive a copy of that recording, ask someone else at your organization, because anyone that is on this monthly meeting should be receiving those copies or those emails. The audit field staff training is scheduled for December 2nd. If there are some of you that might be at the WAG meeting that day, if you're unable to participate in this training but still would like to listen, as a reminder, it is being recorded. And there is a link from where the training center is hosting the YouTube playlist for us. So you would have had the old trainings that we had in the past, as well as the new ones that are getting uploaded there now. And then in December, we will have a twin operations rehearsal by all providers. The request is for 2 projects each. And then your user list updates will be due to DHCD at the end of December, and our go live date is January 12th. And then for our WAP scorecard, it's going to run through October 31st. And we'll go through the normal items that we typically go through for the ACPU levels, the health and safety percentages, the spending imbalances, and production count. For our network ACPU level, you'll see that for the new program years, the invoices have not been approved. Those that have been able to be submitted, and then those that the grant agreements are getting ready to go out. But you can see for DOE and LIHEAP where we ended up so far, and then where we are for IJA. And on the right side, as you would have seen in previous months, those are the ACPU levels for each of the funding sources. So where we should be versus the left side of where we are. And then for our health and safety percentages, for DOE 24, we are at 13.73%. LIHEAP, it was right at 19.27%. We do have, with the LIHEAP state plan, an exception to have a higher health and safety percentage. It is capped, but it is a higher one than we do have for DOE. And then for IJA, we're at 9.77%, which is higher than it was the prior few months. So for DOE 24, we are in the process of closing out that grant. There is one invoice that people had some additional questions on, but we should be having that closed out soon. And from the information that we had before, we will be within the allowable ACPU level. Because I know earlier on, a few months back, we did have concerns with that being elevated, and that agencies would potentially have to be owing funds back to the Department of Energy. At this point, it does not appear that that will be the case, but we are in the closeout period. And then for LIHEAP, you can see where we finished off. Any of the red numbers on the far right would show the production that would be needed to stay within the allowable ACPU limit. For our ACPU level, LIHEAP is where we do have the most flexibility though, but you will see most of the subgrantees were elevated there, and that our final ACPU was roughly 12,600. Right now, you're not going to see any items spent for the program year 25, but you can get an idea of what the allocation amounts are and what the projected units are. Those are being entered into Hancock where you can see them. I would say that you should be able to see those within the next day or two prior to having the grant agreements sent out to you. This would be for the readiness fund of how many units you would need and the allocation that you are being awarded. And then for LIHEAP as well, what our allocation is, what your projected units would need to be. And then for IJA, you'll see where we are with our current first 50% of
the computer saying that management is looking at all your browser stuff and can.
And what our current allowable amount is, where we are production wise and where we are projected unit wise. And in the next slide, I believe you'll see what our next steps are for trying to meet the milestones for the next release of funds. So we do need 1,442 units to meet 30% of our goal. In IJA 1, which is a program notice from DOE, you'll see there are certain milestones that we have to meet in order to receive the funds. They based the production goal on the state plan that was submitted for those funds, and the amount at that time was 4,808 units. Right now, we're at 1,305 units that have been on approved invoices. So we would need 137 more units. And we're at 90.4% towards the goal for capturing that remaining 32.8 million of the grant. There are other milestones, and I think, Stephen, you had a question?
Yeah, when you was fixing to mention those other milestones, I think monitoring this funding source is one of them. And I'm wondering if we can get started on that and be ready, or do we have to wait till our goal of units is completed before that?
I think it's able to be started now. We do have the technical team that will be going and providing those monitoring visits. There have been some that have taken place, but a larger amount will be going forward in the very near future. I don't know if David or Tim want to add anything to that, but there are certain milestones that we as the grantee have to meet. The one that is more on the sub-grantee side is going to be the production, which we are nearing that. And at this point, I think DOE is hoping within the next few months that by the time we've met those milestones, that they would be able to release those funds. Because it has been a little bit of time since they've been able to release the final 50% releases. But we are on track, and we have monthly meetings with our DOE project officer, and he's happy to see where we are.
Yeah, it's a good time to go ahead. And me and Tim was talking about it this morning, actually. We're getting a monitoring plan ready for the technical team. And, most of the network will probably be expecting some communication and contact in the near future, probably before the first of the year, but we're waiting for, Thanksgiving to kind of pass right now. But definitely be expecting those lines of communication soon.
Yeah, I would just add to what David said. The IJA monitoring is kind of a rolling thing. So whereas DOE has a certain amount that must be completed every year. So and we just finished up our year on time, and and the IJA ones we've done some, but as David said, we're going to be starting to attack both IJA and DOE, but IJA again is rolling over the entire grant period. So we have to make up some time, but we've got some completes. We can count those.
Okay, and then for our upcoming monthly network meetings, we have one scheduled for December 10th, and then we'll have the next one January 7th. Those invites were sent out last week on the 6th. If you didn't receive one and would like to, just please contact me and I can have those forwarded. And then the next section is going to be the weatherization deferral repair updates. Aaron is out in the field today, so Tim is going to go over this section for us.
Yeah, this is going to be more brief than normal on the WDR updates. Go to the next slide. Just reminders, these are the documentation forms and requirements that are on the WDR website and the dates for each of those forms. And just to let you know that those are the most up-to-date forms that are there. So all those, make sure you're not replicating old ones. Make sure you're getting the new ones and using the new ones. Okay, and then we're going to go over the scorecard and just a little discussion about an upcoming WDR CAMS training refresher. So next slide. So this is the scorecard. Again, only one grant year allocation is what we're operating on for everybody right now. We finally consolidated and closed out all legacy grant years, and you can see where we're at. And it's about 14 million remaining in the WDR fund. So next slide. Here, this is of course the amount that we're of average dollars and homes that we're addressing deferral repairs. It looks like the average project cost is settling in for single family at about that 21,000 level. The multifamily unit cost went up a little bit. I think there's just been a little bit more focus on multifamily in the last year. And I think what's interesting is the number of homes, at least, seems to be a little bit lower than years past, and I think that's because there was a great push, very much appreciated push to utilize the WRF funds in 2025, and that probably is one reason why you see the drop from 420 units single family in 2024 to 274 so far in 2025. And you can see where a lot of, in the bottom table there, where a lot of those projects are going. And I also kind of illustrates, I think, the role that WRF and folks catching up on utilizing those funds with the drop off in the roofs, because that's what WRF funds have been used for. So it went in WDR, the roof projects went from 232 to 144. From 24 to 25, and so a lot good utilization of WRF. So that's good to see. So next slide. So Aaron asked me what my thoughts were on this, because he suggested we have a training and refresher, and I think there's new people in the market or in the network, and and I think he's just been observing some trends in the documentation that's been coming forward. And he thought it'd be useful to just do a WDR CAMS training and refresher on documentation and how to navigate CAMS and so forth. So right now he's targeting early December. It'd probably be just a 1-hour presentation. We can record it, provide the presentation, but topics are just CAMS, WDR funding overview, doing setup reports, remittances, the documentation and processes, change order policies, and photo requirements. If you have other topics that you'd like to have covered in such a training, please let Aaron know. So, and that's it. Next slide. Okay, Michelle?
And we did wrap up a little bit earlier today, and I know we'll be seeing many of you for the upcoming training. While we're all on here, does anyone have any questions or items that you'd like to bring up in front of the group? Ken?
Hey everybody. Sorry I was a couple minutes late getting on from an internal call, but did you mention anything about when we can expect to see the new DOE grant agreement?
I would anticipate by the end of this week. We had hoped to have it out earlier, but there was an item that held it up, and I would anticipate hopefully by the end of this week, if not early next week.
Okay. Thank you.
It looks like maybe Bill Beachy had the question.
Yeah, Tim, refresh my memory. Is there any sort of schedule or expectation or requirement as far as production on this final or current WDR contract? None. Okay, I didn't think so, but
if it's not expended by June, we'll just amend it. That's our plan. Yeah, the issue we had, we just had to clean up. Several agencies had 2, one agency had 3. Finance doesn't like that, so but everyone's on the same grant agreement, and we can just roll that forward, and everything's been allocated. So
okay, all right, great, thanks.
Hey Michelle, since we do have a little bit of extra time, and since folks joined late, do you want to maybe go back to the first slide and just review that quickly for everyone?
Yes, for those of you that joined a little bit later, and just to recap, because I think this would be more of the vital or newer information from this meeting, would be that we have been notified for LIHEAP 25 that we're unable to receive the advance funds or reimbursements from DSS until the federal shutdown ends. Reimbursement of those funds for invoices that are submitted would be delayed because of this. We will be processing the invoices as quickly as possible. but payment cannot be made until the advance funds are either received or reimbursements from DSS are received. And then IJA update payments are still being processed. When we've talked with DOE, there has been a little bit of a slighter delay with those compared in the past, but they are being processed. If there are additional steps that are taken for IJA invoices because those, and I think I'm gonna, the slide got moved, I think. Leroy, could you, thank you. For IJA, there are additional steps that have to take place while we are waiting for the final release of the 50% of funds. So for us, there's additional steps at DOE that have to take place and is why it's been taking a little bit longer. And then for DOE 25, we do anticipate the grant agreements going out by the end of this week. And then in PY 25, this program year, as a reminder, for any WRF funds that are unspent, we would be reallocating some of the DOE admin. The DOE admin amounts are calculated with the WRF portion of the allocation included in the calculation. That is not how we treated it the first grant cycle we had these funds, but is the way that we are treating it going forward.
Yeah, and I threw Michelle a curveball by adding that sub bullet there that will provide guidance at a future date on the impact of the delay on quarterly goals and grant year-end extensions amendments for the DOE 25 grant agreement. I know a few of you all have asked me about that, and so we still have to, once we actually get them out, that's the time that we'll start to figure out, how we want to handle that.
Do we have any additional questions?
Yeah. So I know DOE has let us change some categories and possibly use intake and QCI and auditor as a separate category. That's coming with this new contract. IJA, is that in the future, possibly the next half, or don't know anything about it?
Yes, so I don't recall the exact program notice for it, but yes, IJA, we will be able to have those additional optional budget categories in the future. But the only time frame that we can do that is when we amend our state plan, when we've met the milestones to have that final 50% release. That's when DOE is stating that we can add those additional budget categories in.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Not, I'm going to end the recording. And